Have you ever found yourself staring into the emptiness of another ordinary morning, feeling the weight of existence pressing down on your shoulders, and somewhere deep within your being, a voice whispers that it would be easier to simply stop trying? Not the dramatic despair that makes headlines, but that quiet, persistent exhaustion that tells you the effort of continuing is too much, that the world asks more than you can give, that the distance between who you are and who you dream of, becoming has grown too vast to cross. This is not weakness speaking. This is not failure announcing itself. This is something far more profound, far more sacred than our modern understanding typically allows. When the desire to give up arises in your consciousness, when that overwhelming fatigue settles into your bones and makes every step forward feel like walking through deep water, what you are experiencing is not the end of your journey but a critical threshold. A moment when your soul, that immortal essence within you, is sending out a distress signal that demands your complete attention. The ancient mystery schools understood something about these moments of profound spiritual crisis that our contemporary world has largely forgotten. They recognized that the desire to surrender, to lay down the burdens of existence, often arrives not when we are furthest from our path, but when we are closest to a transformation we are not yet ready to consciously accept. Your soul is not asking you to quit. It is begging you to listen, to stop, to recognize that something fundamental must change in how you are living, in what you are pursuing, in the very foundation upon which you have built your understanding of existence. In the teachings preserved through countless generations of wisdom keepers, there exists a concept that modern psychology is only beginning to rediscover: the understanding that every genuine spiritual awakening must pass through what the mystics called the dark night of the soul. This is not poetic language meant to romanticize suffering. This is a precise description of a universal human experience, the moment when everything you believed about yourself, about the world, about the meaning of your existence, suddenly reveals itself as insufficient. The desire to give up that you feel is the death rattle of an old way of being, the last desperate protest of an identity that knows it must dissolve to make room for something greater. Think of the caterpillar in its chrysalis. Science has revealed something extraordinary about this process. The caterpillar does not simply grow wings and emerge transformed. Instead, it must literally dissolve, breaking down into a primordial soup of cells that contain within them the blueprint for something entirely new. For a time, it is neither caterpillar nor butterfly, but something formless, something that has surrendered its previous form completely. Your desire to give up, when examined with the eyes of wisdom rather than fear, is often this same process beginning in your consciousness. Something in you knows that you cannot continue as you have been, that the old patterns, the old beliefs, the old way of meeting the world has exhausted itself, and now you stand at the threshold where dissolution must occur before rebirth can begin. The ancient Hermetic principle teaches us that as above, so below, as within, so without. What this means in practical terms is that the external circumstances that exhaust us, that make us want to surrender, are always mirrors of internal processes we have not yet brought into conscious awareness. When you feel the crushing weight of responsibilities, the endless demands of a world that seems to want more than you can give, what you are often experiencing is not actually an external problem, but an internal misalignment. Your soul, that deep knowing within you, recognizes that you are living in a way that violates your essential nature. You have accepted beliefs about who you should be, what you should accomplish, how you should appear to others, and these beliefs have become a cage so subtle that you mistake its bars for the structure of reality itself. The desire to give up is your soul's way of telling you that these beliefs are killing something vital within you, that the life you are trying to maintain is not actually your life at all, but a performance, a role, a costume you have worn so long that you forgot it was not your skin. This is why simply pushing through, simply gritting your teeth and forcing yourself to continue, often makes the situation worse. You cannot fix a fundamental misalignment by adding more effort. You can only fix it by stopping long enough to ask the essential question: what am I trying so hard to maintain? And is it worth the cost to my soul? Carl Jung, that great explorer of the human psyche, understood that the crisis moments in our lives are never random accidents but purposeful interventions by the deeper layers of consciousness, attempting to correct a dangerous course. He called this the wisdom of the unconscious, the understanding that beneath our everyday awareness exists a vast intelligence that can see patterns and connections we consciously miss. When you experience the desire to give up, Jung would say that your unconscious is trying desperately to get your attention, to make you stop pursuing a path that leads away from your true self rather than toward it. The exhaustion you feel is not a sign that you are weak. It is a sign that you are strong enough to feel the truth, that some part of you refuses to continue living a lie, even when that lie is comfortable, even when that lie is socially acceptable, even when that lie seems like the only option available. Your fatigue is holy. Your desire to surrender is sacred, not because giving up is the answer, but because these feelings are the doorway through which genuine transformation must pass. The soul does not speak in the language of logic and reason. It speaks in the language of feeling, of intuition, of those quiet inner knowing moments that we so often dismiss as impractical or unrealistic. When your soul cries for help through this desire to quit, it is not asking you to abandon your life. It is asking you to abandon the false version of life you have been trying to sustain. At this moment, I want to pause and ask, have you ever felt that you are carrying a weight that should not be yours? As if you were living the life others expected of you, instead of the life your soul truly desires. This profound exhaustion that makes you question whether it is worth continuing. Do you recognize this feeling now? If you are experiencing this spiritual fatigue at this very moment, know that this feeling is not your enemy. It is your guide, trying to show you a different path. Share in the comments by simply writing "listening to my soul," so that other seekers know they are not alone in this journey of profound transformation. Your simple acknowledgement may be the light another person needs to understand that the desire to give up is not weakness but the beginning of greater courage. I deeply appreciate your authentic presence here. The mystery traditions of ancient Egypt, Greece, and the East all recognized that genuine spiritual development requires what they called initiation, a process of dying and being reborn while still living in the physical body. These were not mere ceremonies or rituals, though ceremonies marked the stages. True initiation was an internal experience where the aspirant had to confront the parts of themselves that were false, that were borrowed, that were constructed from fear and social conditioning rather than from the truth of their being. The desire to give up that you experience is often the beginning of this initiatory process, whether you recognize it as such or not. Your soul is initiating you, forcing you through crisis into a confrontation with truth that you have been avoiding. The ancient initiates understood that you cannot build a temple to house the divine on a foundation of lies. First, the old structure must come down. First, the ground must be cleared. First, there must be a dissolution, a surrendering of what was, before anything new can be constructed. This is why the desire to give up feels so total, so complete, so overwhelming. It is not asking you to surrender one small piece of your life. It is asking you to surrender your entire understanding of who you think you are, so that you can discover who you actually are, beneath all the layers of conditioning and expectation. Consider for a moment the story of the alchemical process, that great spiritual metaphor that has guided seekers for thousands of years. Alchemy speaks of transforming lead into gold, but the wise have always understood this as a description of transforming the base material of ordinary consciousness into the gold of enlightened awareness. The first stage of this process is called nigredo, the blackening, the dark night when everything must be broken down, burned away, reduced to its essential components. The alchemists understood that you cannot transform something without first destroying its current form. The lead must be melted, dissolved, taken apart at a fundamental level before it can be reconstituted as gold. When you feel the desire to give up, you are experiencing nigredo. You are in the fire that breaks down the old forms. This is not pleasant. This is not comfortable. The alchemists warned that this stage is where most aspirants fail, not because they lack the strength to continue, but because they cannot understand that the destruction they are experiencing is necessary, that the burning away is not the end, but the beginning. Your soul knows this even when your mind does not. Your soul is willing to go through the fire because it knows what waits on the other side. The desire to give up is the lead crying out as it melts, unaware that it is being prepared for transformation into gold. The Buddhist tradition offers us another way to understand this experience through the concept of dukkha, often translated as suffering but more accurately understood as the unsatisfactoriness of existence, when we cling to things that are impermanent. The Buddha taught that the root of our suffering is not life itself, but our attachment to a particular version of how life should be. When you experience the desire to give up, what you are often feeling is the collision between your expectations and reality, between the story you told yourself about how your life would unfold and the actual unfolding that is occurring. Your soul is asking you to release the attachment, to stop trying to force reality to match your story, to surrender the exhausting effort of trying to control what cannot be controlled. This is not passive resignation. This is active wisdom, the recognition that there is a flow to existence, a current that moves through all things, and when we align ourselves with that current, life becomes not easier but more authentic, not without challenge, but without the added suffering that comes from resisting what is. The desire to give up the struggle is actually the beginning of wisdom, the moment when you might finally be ready to stop fighting against the river and learn instead to navigate its waters. In the Sufi tradition, there exists a concept called fana, the annihilation of the ego self, the dissolution of the false identity that we have constructed from our fears, our desires, our need for approval and control. The Sufis teach that before you can experience Baka, the eternal subsistence in divine truth, you must first pass through fana, through the death of everything you thought you were. This is terrifying to the ego, which is why the desire to give up feels so overwhelming, so total, so much like an ending. Your ego is correct. It is an ending. It is the ending of its dominance, the ending of its ability to run your life based on fear and conditioning. But what the ego experiences as death, the soul experiences as liberation. When you feel the desire to give up, you are standing at the threshold of fana, at the door where you might finally be willing to let go of the false self that has been running your life, making your decisions, choosing your path, based on what it thinks will keep you safe rather than what will make you whole. The practical application of this understanding is profound and immediate. When the desire to give up arises, your first responsibility is not to fight it or to shame yourself for feeling it, but to listen to it with compassion and curiosity. What is this feeling trying to tell you? What part of your life has become unsustainable? What belief about yourself or the world is this exhaustion asking you to examine? The soul speaks through the body, through emotions, through these moments of crisis that force us to stop and pay attention. Create space for silence, for stillness, for the kind of deep listening that our noisy world makes almost impossible. This might mean taking time away from your normal routines, stepping back from commitments that can be stepped back from, creating boundaries that protect your energy while you do this essential internal work. It means asking yourself the hard questions. Am I living my life or performing someone else's expectations? What would I do differently if I was not afraid of disappointing others? What dreams have I abandoned because they seemed impractical? And what is the cost of that abandonment to my soul? These questions are not abstract philosophy. They are practical tools for diagnosis, ways to identify where the misalignment exists between your external life and your internal truth. The ancient Greeks understood this through the oracle at Delphi, which bore the inscription, "Know thyself." This was not a suggestion, but a commandment, the foundational principle of all genuine spiritual development. You cannot transform what you do not understand. You cannot heal what you refuse to see. The desire to give up is your soul's way of saying that you have gone as far as you can go without deeper self-knowledge, that you must now turn inward, must now do the difficult work of examining the foundations of your life with honesty and courage. This requires what the mystics called discernment, the ability to distinguish between the voice of your true self and the voices of conditioning, fear, social expectation, and unconscious patterns. One practical way to develop this discernment is through the practice of witnessing, of observing your thoughts and feelings without immediately identifying with them. When the desire to give up arises, instead of saying, "I want to give up," try saying, "I am noticing a desire to give up." This small shift creates space between you and the feeling, allows you to examine it rather than be consumed by it. In that space, you can begin to ask, whose voice is this really? Is this my soul speaking, or is this my fear? Is this wisdom guiding me toward necessary change, or is this exhaustion tempting me toward escape? The shamanic traditions of indigenous cultures around the world recognize that every genuine healing, every real transformation, required a journey into the underworld, into the dark places within consciousness where the unexamined parts of ourselves dwell. The shaman does not fear this descent. The shaman knows that the treasures we seek, the wisdom we need, the healing we long for, all of these exist not in the comfortable, well-lit regions of consciousness, but in the shadows, in the places we have been taught to avoid. When you feel the desire to give up, you are being called to make this shamanic journey, to descend into your own underworld and retrieve the parts of yourself that you have lost or abandoned or never knew existed. This is sacred work. This is the hero's journey that Joseph Campbell identified as the universal pattern underlying all mythology, all genuine spirituality. The hero must leave the ordinary world, must face trials and challenges, must descend into darkness, must die in some essential way before they can return transformed, carrying the boon that will heal not only themselves but their community. Your desire to give up is the call to adventure, the moment when you must choose whether to continue living a small, safe life or to risk the journey into unknown territories where transformation awaits. What makes this moment so powerful and so dangerous is that it genuinely is a threshold, a liminal space where you could go in either direction. You could respond to the soul's cry for help by numbing yourself, by pushing through with sheer force of will, by distracting yourself with endless activity and entertainment, by medicating the pain rather than listening to its message. Many people make this choice and they continue living, but something essential in them dies anyway. That spark of authentic life, that connection to their own depths, slowly fades until they become what the existentialists called the living dead, people who are biologically alive but spiritually extinct. Or you could respond to this crisis as the opportunity it truly is, as the invitation to transformation that your soul intended it to be. You could choose to stop, to listen, to examine your life with brutal honesty, to ask the hard questions and sit with the uncomfortable answers, to begin the slow, difficult work of realigning your external life with your internal truth. This path is not easier. In many ways, it is harder, at least initially, because it requires you to acknowledge where you have been living falsely, where you have betrayed yourself, where you have chosen comfort over authenticity. But it is the only path that leads to genuine life, to the kind of existence where you feel fully alive, fully yourself, fully engaged with the sacred mystery of being human. The ancient principle of correspondence, one of the 7 Hermetic laws, teaches us that patterns repeat at every level of existence, from the cosmic to the personal. Just as the cosmos goes through cycles of expansion and contraction, creation and destruction, so too does the individual soul move through seasons of growth and dissolution. You are not experiencing something unique to you. You are experiencing a universal pattern, a necessary stage in the evolution of consciousness. Every saint, every sage, every person who has genuinely transformed their being has passed through this same dark night where the desire to give up felt overwhelming. They survived not because they were stronger than you, not because they had something you lack, but because they understood that the crisis was temporary, that it was purposeful, that it was the labor pain preceding a new birth. You can trust this process even when you cannot see where it leads. You can surrender to the transformation even when it feels like annihilation. Your soul would not have initiated this process if you were not ready for it, even though your mind and your ego feel completely unprepared. There is a deeper wisdom at work here, an intelligence that knows better than your conscious awareness what you need for your continued growth and evolution. The Kabbalistic tradition speaks of Tzimtzum, the divine contraction that made creation possible. In the beginning, God filled all space, leaving no room for anything else to exist. Creation could only occur when God contracted, withdrew, made space for something other than itself. In your life, the desire to give up is often a call for tzimtzum, for creating space by releasing what fills your existence but no longer serves your growth. You may need to contract from certain relationships, certain activities, certain identities that you have been maintaining out of habit or obligation, rather than genuine calling. This feels like loss. It feels like giving up. But it is actually making space for something new to emerge, for something more aligned with your true nature, to take root and grow. The question is not whether you should continue with everything exactly as it is, because your soul has already told you that this is not sustainable. The question is what needs to be released, what needs to be transformed, what needs to be approached differently, so that your life becomes an expression of your soul's purpose, rather than a violation of it. In the final consideration, the desire to give up that you feel is sacred communication, a direct message from the deepest part of your being that cannot be ignored without consequence. Your soul is not asking you to quit your life. It is asking you to quit the life that is not truly yours, to surrender the false self you have been maintaining, to stop trying to be someone you are not, to release the exhausting effort of pretending that everything is fine when it is not. This is an invitation to authenticity, to courage, to the kind of radical honesty that few people are willing to embrace. When you feel this desire, you are being given a choice. You can medicate it, distract from it, push through it, and continue as you have been, slowly dying inside while maintaining the appearance of life. Or you can answer the call, can do the difficult work of transformation, can allow yourself to be broken down so that you can be reconstituted in a form that actually fits your soul. The path of transformation is not easy, but it is the only path that leads to genuine fulfillment, to the deep satisfaction of living in alignment with your truth, rather than in opposition to it. Your soul knows this. It has always known this. Now it is asking you to know it too, to wake up, to pay attention, to recognize that this crisis is not your ending, but your beginning, not your failure, but your initiation, not the moment you gave up, but the moment you finally started living for real. If you are also seeking to understand these deep callings of the soul and wish to continue exploring the mysteries of spiritual transformation, this channel exists so we can walk together through these challenging territories of awakening. Each week, we share ancestral teachings and profound reflections that can illuminate your path in moments of greatest inner darkness. Subscribe to become part of this community of courageous souls who chose to answer the call of transformation instead of silencing it. Here you will find not easy answers, but the wisdom that has sustained seekers through the centuries, reminders that your journey, however difficult it may seem, is sacred and has deep meaning. I am immensely grateful that you have dedicated this time to hear these words, and I hope they have touched something true in your soul, something that knows, even when everything else doubts, that you are on the right path.